Hey guys, back with another video, a video response to benzo8686, and he had a great video talking about RPGs that you were really satisfied to complete. And first, I have to definitely recommend his channel. He's been on YouTube for a very long time, way before I was making videos. He does videos mostly talking about RPGs, but all sorts of gaming videos. Fantastic channel. Definitely check that out. Check his channel out. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. He hadn't made a video in a while, but he's been doing a couple of them recently. And one of the videos he did was talking about RPGs that you felt were very satisfying to complete. And you know, this is not like RPGs that like are some of your favorites of all time, for instance, that you just loved playing through them. More like where you felt very satisfied beating the game. Maybe because you struggled throughout, or there's like certain parts of the game that you really struggled through, and just when you beat the game, you just felt really good about yourself. And there's a few games. I've got 4 of them here that I'll talk about here. We'll start right off with Demon's Souls. Maybe a bit of a surprise choice, considering Dark Souls was the first game in this series that I completed. But Demon's Souls was the Souls game I struggled with the most. And I was surprised because Dark Souls, it was rough in the beginning, but like the second half of Dark Souls, I felt it was actually not that difficult. Demon's Souls, it was pretty difficult throughout because I used a melee-only character, and magic is kind of like an easy mode of sorts in Demon's Souls. If you go a magic route, that game can be pretty easy. But with melee, a lot of the bosses just really, like, man, it was tough. The Flame Lurker in particular, it took me so many tries to get him, and when I finally did, it was just like this great moment for me. And then of course I got to like what were they called, the man eaters later, and I got stuck at them for a while. And the final boss in Demon's Souls was very difficult as well. The whole game, I don't know, I really had a hard time with it, surprisingly. And but at the same time, it was very satisfying to finally get that game done. And it's a game I've gone back to multiple times, but it was mainly that first playthrough that was very satisfying for me. And I think that's like the entire series in a nutshell. It's just a very rewarding and satisfying series to get through. But more importantly, I just find those games to be just really fun. But yeah, I'll choose Demon's Souls as the Souls game that was most satisfying for me to complete. The next game is Final Fantasy VI, and there's a few reasons I chose this game. For one, it was the first Final Fantasy game I ever completed, and I actually have a video that I did a while back talking about what I thought about the game, basically. But the reason this was so satisfying, even though it was actually pretty frustrating for me as well, is because I got to the final dungeon, and it turns out you basically have to split your party up in different groups to get through that dungeon. And I played the game with certain characters. There were certain characters I just flat out ignored for basically the entire game. And so I got to that point in the game, and I had to do a bunch of grinding because I just couldn't get through the final dungeon with the characters I had. It was basically impossible, and the encounter rate was absolutely ridiculous. It was pretty frustrating, and I had to grind a bunch just to get there. A part of me wanted to give up at that moment, but I figured I enjoyed the game so much up until that point, and this was the first Final Fantasy game I really played for a good while, a good long time. So I thought, no, I need to get this finished. I need to complete it. So I did the work. I did tons of grinding. I listened to music while doing that. It wasn't very fun, I'm not going to lie, but finally getting my characters up to snuff and getting through that final dungeon, which is a very epic final dungeon with multiple boss battles, and you know, finally seeing that ending for myself, it was very rewarding. I felt good at the end, even though it was a pain in the ass. And when I look back on that game, that's the thing I don't like about it too much. I wish that you didn't have to split your party up for that final dungeon. I should have expected it though, because you had to do it a few times before throughout the game, but they were very short sections that you could use characters that were underleveled and still get through those sections. But yeah, it's, you know, for 2 different reasons, you know, it being my first Final Fantasy game I ever completed, and then just, you know, how epic that final section of the game is, and the fact that I had to grind a bunch just to be able to get through it. It's very memorable. That game's always going to it's always going to hold a special place for me, I guess. And it's it's obviously a lot of people love Final Fantasy VI. It's considered one of the best games in the series. It's not my favorite. After playing a lot more games in the series since then, I rank 7, 8, and 9 actually all higher than that. But I still really did enjoy Final Fantasy VI, and it was definitely one of the most satisfying RPGs that I've completed. The next game is Persona 3, and this was the first Shin Megami Tensei game I ever played. I had heard about this series for the longest time, and I just never got around to playing them. A big part of that, a big reason why is that because I never owned a well, I only owned a PS1 and PS2 for brief periods, so I never got to play all like the amazing RPGs that came out on those systems. I'm just getting to them now, and I played Persona 3 for the first time. I think it's probably a couple of years ago. It was around when I first started this channel, and I immediately fell in love with it. It was amazing from start to finish, and it's one of those games where I think like the story and characters were just as great as the gameplay, and they blended together so perfectly. And there's just a main gameplay loop with the Persona games that I find so addictive. Or at least Persona 3 and 4. I still need to play the original Persona and Persona 2, but this is one of those games that I was so addicted to, I just could not put it down, and I was in love with it from start to finish. Now, it wasn't ever too difficult. I did play on the normal difficulty as well, and the Persona games are known for being not quite as difficult as the mainline series, and I still need to play Nocturne, which made an appearance on benzo8686 list, and I need to still play that game. I'm a bit intimidated by that game, but especially considering SMT4 wasn't all that difficult for me, even on the normal mode. But back to Persona 3. It wasn't a very difficult game up until the final boss, where it was this long, like almost hour-long battle of attrition, where there was multiple times where I felt like I was close to dying and getting a game over in the middle of this hour-long battle, and it was rough, but I got through it, and at the end of it, like it was just so satisfying, and I got this amazing ending to this game. And when you finish a Persona game, and this was the same thing with Persona 4, you really miss these characters. You spend so much time with these characters, and when you finally finish the game, it's kind of sad because you're leaving these characters behind. And I felt that way at the end of Persona 3, that I went through this long, amazing journey, and it wrapped up with this epic final boss battle that was just so long and fairly difficult. It's weird too because the rest of the game I didn't find that difficult. Some bosses were maybe a bit challenging, but the final boss was definitely a big step up. But yeah, I always go back and forth as to whether Persona 3 or 4 is my favorite. I still need to play Persona 4 Golden, so after I play that, Persona 4 might be my favorite. And of course, we've got Persona 5 coming soon, but Persona 3, a very satisfying game for me to complete. All right, and the last game, the most satisfying RPG I've ever completed, and it's a game I've talked about before, and in fact, I have a review of this game on my channel, and that's the 7th Saga. And this game is considered actually to be one of the hardest JRPGs ever made. And I would agree with that assessment. I had a hell of a time getting through this game. And it's noteworthy because it's actually one of the first RPGs I ever played. I don't know the exact first RPG I ever played. It was either this, Earthbound, or Super Mario RPG. It's one of those three. I can't really remember which one exactly, but it might have actually been this game, which is hilarious to think that the first JRPG I ever played was one of the hardest ever made. And it's a very interesting game. I really like it to this day. And I actually finished it not too long ago for the first time. I never was able to beat it when I was a kid because, yeah, this game is insanely difficult. And it's very difficult up until the very end. You basically choose a character in the beginning, and I've heard mixed things on which character makes the game easier or harder. The game is still ridiculously difficult no matter which character you choose, but I think that's one of the more interesting parts of the game. You choose a character, and later you can have one of the other characters join your party. You can't get a 4-character party, you can only have a 2-character party, but it's kind of cool in that way. And then all the other characters are going for this crystal, like, I think it's a crystal. That's what you're going for. Like, the story is absolute garbage. It's mainly the gameplay why I like the game. I like the battle system quite a bit. And the music and atmosphere to the game is really interesting, too. But the other characters, you can, like, some of them can be your rivals, and you can find them throughout the world and actually fight them. And the reason why this game is so difficult is because with the English version, they changed things around where enemies were made stronger, and the stats you'd get from leveling up were reduced. And basically, the other characters that you would find and that you had to fight, and sometimes you have to fight these other characters to progress through the game, their stats were increased. So anytime you would find these characters, if you leveled up, the more you leveled up, I think, the harder they would be. And they would always have higher stats than you. So those fights were ridiculously difficult in this game. And the bosses overall were very difficult. They required a lot of trial and error. The game was very maze-like in general. It was very hard to find your way around the world. The dungeons were very maze-like too. Saving was pretty brutal. Anytime you died, you lost, I want to say, half your gold, I think. And later in the game, that is a huge deal. To the point where if you die in this game, you pretty much want to reset the system as fast as you can so you don't actually lose all your gold. It was a pain in the ass to get this game completed. I had to use a walkthrough pretty much the entire way through. And certain boss battles, if you didn't use very specific strategies, you were just not going to beat them. It's a very grindy game. You had to grind like crazy to even have a slight chance at beating some of these bosses. The amount of times I died throughout this game, it was just insane. And I only was able to beat it with one character. I beat it with the wizard, I believe. I'm pretty sure it was the wizard I beat it with. Yeah. And actually, the game can be harder if you have a second character with you, because I think your experience is reduced if you go with a second character in your team. So it's actually some people believe it's actually easier to play the game solo. But very interesting game. If you're up for an extreme challenge, I highly recommend it. But it's not going to be for everyone, and I'm not sure it holds up extremely well. It's just one of those games that's very nostalgic to me. And in that sense, it was definitely satisfying to finally finish it. And the final boss was just insane. It took me so many tries to do it. So yeah, this is one of those games that even if you were to play this on emulator with save states, it would still be a bitch to complete this game. It's kind of weird that I was able to get through this game, but some games I've just given up on, like Final Fantasy 13, for instance. The final boss, I just gave up on the final boss and just watched the ending on YouTube. Yet this game, I actually tried and actually got it completed. I don't know. I'm weird like that. But yeah, Seven Saga, easily the most satisfying RPG I've ever completed. Not a game a lot of people talk about or know about even. It's kind of an obscure RPG that kind of got lost in the shuffle in terms of like Super Nintendo RPGs. I think it's better than like controversial opinion here, Secret of Mana. I don't know. I hate that game. I just cannot get into that game. I think that game's overrated. But yeah, I'll probably get bashed for that. But anyways, that's it, guys. That's the video. Very interesting topic. Definitely check out benzo8686. Definitely check out his channel. Some other people have done responses to this video too. Dustin Christ did one. Ball and Nick did one. So definitely check out those videos too. Feel free to do a video response to this one too, if you don't mind. Or just, in the comments, what are some of your most satisfying RPGs that you've completed? But yeah, in terms of what's next for the channel, I'm still working my way through Metal Gear Solid 5. That game's long. I'm trying to get the true ending, so it's going to take a little while. I was thinking of doing like a first impressions video on that, but I'll just wait till like complete the game and get a video out there. But spoilers, that game's amazing. Yeah, that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.